It's been nearly 4 years since the imaginary virus swept the Earth, and almost 3 since the release of its antidote. A miracle vaccine that utilized a brand new, never-before-seen technology, with capabilities far beyond our existing antiquated immunizations. Its swift release came with a promise that it was completely safe and 95% effective. That it would ensure your grandmother's survival and secure your future employment. It would protect you, not only from the dangerous contagion, but from the even more dangerous social contagion that had taken hold of the mob. You would no longer run the risk of being ostracized by your friends or excommunicated by your family. It would eliminate the risk of being threatened on public transportation by strangers who wish death upon you and your children. You wouldn't have to abandon any more of your family members as they died in a cold and sterile hospital bed. But 3 years and 10 boosters later, it seems like every month another acquaintance of mine is dropping dead from a heart attack. And that social contagion? Well, the world has never been more divided. In other words, as suspected, all of those promises fell short. And while anyone with 2 eyes to see would call the response to the pandemic an epic failure, the regime continues to operate as though the Titanic didn't just smash into a giant iceberg, and that it successfully made its way across the Atlantic Ocean. And now we're all expected to clap for the captain of the ship. And that's exactly what we did this week, when the circus production of Delusion awarded 2 scientists a Nobel Prize for their contribution to the development of COVID-19 vaccines. I mean, the fact that anyone would be awarded for creating something so dangerous and deadly is ridiculous enough on its own, but after Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize for bombing 7 countries, this isn't what should surprise you. What should set off alarm bells is that these 2 won the prize instead of the actual inventor of mRNA technology, Robert Malone. You see, back in the late 1980s, Robert Malone, in a landmark experiment, discovered that it was possible to transfer mRNA protected by a liposome into cultured cells to signal the information needed for the production of proteins. Yeah, I don't really get what any of this means either, but we don't have to get what it means. Because up until the COVID-19 pandemic, the scientific community agreed that it meant Robert Malone was the inventor of mRNA technology. Even Wikipedia recognized Malone as the pioneer, as the Wayback Machine shows us that before the pandemic, their page on mRNA vaccines said the following. In 1989, Robert W. Malone P. Felgner et al. Developed a high-efficiency in vitro and in vivo RNA transfection system using cationic liposomes. These studies were evidence that in vitro transcribed mRNA could deliver the genetic information to produce proteins within living cell tissue. But then something unexpected happened. After the release of the vaccine, Malone started talking. A lot. In fact, he talked his way right into the highest rated podcast of all time, Joe Rogan. And what he said was not so favorable to the people who stood to gain very handsomely from the vaccine. He said unequivocally that the COVID-19 vaccine was unsafe. A claim he has not wavered on to this day. When recently asked if, given that the patents for mRNA vaccines belong to him and date back to 1989, if he should have gotten the Nobel Prize instead, he replied, "Probably not, because the technology has not been proven to be safe." After making his rounds on several popular podcasts, Wikipedia swiftly removed him as the inventor of mRNA technology. The mainstream media got to work on their hit pieces, and in came Katalin Karikó, a little-known scientist who spent her entire career attempting to improve the technology that Malone developed, to no avail. Until magically, in 2020, everything changed. After the release of the vaccines, she suddenly shot straight up to the top as the darling inventor of the miracle prophylactic. So what exactly was Karikó's contribution to the science behind mRNA vaccines? She and her partner Weissman modified the vaccine by adding pseudouridine, which, get this, made the vaccine less inflammatory. Yeah, that's right. The drug that's inflaming people's hearts to the point of killing them was tweaked by Karikó and Weissman to be less inflammatory earning them a Nobel Prize. That really is something. I can't imagine what the vaccine did before their contribution, but I'm gonna assume it looks something like this. Aside from the fact that the vaccine is unsafe and useless, awarding these two instead of the actual inventor of mRNA technology is kind of like snubbing the Sumerian people for inventing the wheel and instead opting to award the dude who invented spinner hubcaps. Bro, this is wild. Look, I know I didn't make it possible for, like, things to move or whatever, but I made it possible for things to look like they're moving when they're not. Which is super trippy, bro. Trust me, it's jokes. I mean, none of this is surprising. Just as the scientists behind lobotomies won a Nobel Prize back in 1949, our upside-down society will continue to award those who conduct the most atrocious experiments on human beings. As long as it's profitable, of course. I learned very young that you don't win in this world for talent or hard work or virtue. You win by being part of the club. And boy, are these two ever part of the club. Drew Weissman spent his college years studying biochemistry. He engaged in environmental and racial justice and was also a voting rights activist. After graduate school, Weissman completed a residency at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center and a fellowship at the NIH, where he worked on HIV research under the supervision of none other than the king of COVID, Anthony Fauci. Katalin Karikó's rap sheet is even worse. After being demoted 4 times throughout her career because not a single one of her peers saw any value in her contributions to mRNA research, she finally caught her lucky break when she ran into Weissman at a photocopier in 1997. Weissman told her he wanted to create a vaccine for HIV. She told him she could do that, and they became fast friends. In 2005, the pair published their research on how mRNA might be used to send instruction to diseased cells. And in their own words, they were waiting for their phones to ring off the hook, but didn't get a single phone call. It wasn't until 2019 when Karikó became the vice president of BioNTech, the creators of the COVID-19 vaccine, that her hard work finally bared fruit. But wait, there's more. Pfizer, who I will remind you teamed up with Karikó's company BioNTech to create the COVID-19 vaccine, donates heavily to the Karolinska Institute, which is solely responsible for awarding the Nobel Prize. Wow, how perfectly kosher. Katalin was also a communist spy in her home country, Hungary, but she ensures us that she didn't do anyone any harm during that period of her life. Sounds a lot like something a communist spy would say.